Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything with
Mariano
and Pauline.
Hashtag Pauliano. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media, from Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, brought to you today by adamandeve.com, where for a limited time only you'll get 50% off of just about any item on their website when you type in the promo code SMP at checkout. That's SMP, think Social Media Podcast. Welcome once again to the podcast. I am your host, Sarah, and it's wonderful to be joining you again this week as we talk about some of the things that have been trending in social media the past few days. So we're going to get to that, but let's just take a moment to check in, see how you're doing. It's Friday, so for those of you who get the weekend off, happy Friday, happy weekend. I hope you have fun plans coming up for the weekend. It's going to be a pretty laid-back weekend for me, not a lot going on, just a few work things. I'm not actually working all weekend, but I do have a few work things to catch up on, so nothing too strenuous. And then, hanging out with the puppies, which is always fun, and hopefully we'll get outside and go for some walks because, hey, speaking of social media, did you know that today was National Take a Hike Day? And I find that interesting if it, refers to actually going out in nature and hiking rather than, hey, take a hike in a rude sort of way, because it's the middle of November and a lot of people would be taking hikes in snow or at least a lot of rain and mud. It was actually beautiful here today. I live in Northern California and we were sunny and in the 60s probably. So hopefully that will continue this weekend and I'll get out with the dogs and we'll go for a walk and enjoy some of that sunshine before the rainy season kicks in here. So happy Friday. I hope you're going to have a great weekend, and let's get to the podcast. We've got several things to talk about on today's episode. We are going to talk about Blake Shelton. We're going to talk a little bit about Mike and Mike's last show. We're going to talk a little bit about a possible Lord of the Rings reboot, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving that's coming up next week. So that's those are the headlines, and we'll get to those stories right now. Before I start, I feel like I'm really congested. So if I sound all snuffly to you, I apologize. I think it's allergies, but hopefully it's not the beginnings of a cold. But I do apologize if I sound snuffly or if my throat sounds scratchy and you want to clear your throat because of it. I know that's kind of annoying, but I'm going to do my best to power through and talk about social media news. So the first story I want to talk about today is that this week People magazine named Blake Shelton the sexiest man alive, which they do. They name somebody the sexiest man alive every year, and everyone always has an opinion on that, whether they agree with it or not. This year, though, seems to be just, oh my goodness. I logged onto social media the other day after the story had broken, and people were just up in arms. I saw more varieties of tweets on who is sexier than Blake Shelton. I couldn't believe it. There were just so many angry people, ranging from, people just making entire lists of people and things, inanimate objects, that they feel are sexier than Blake Shelton is. People who, there were a couple variations on tweets like, would someone please go check on Idris Elba? I think Jason Momoa was one of them, and somebody else, but because apparently they've all died if Blake Shelton is named the sexiest man alive. Dang, people, don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel. If you don't know who Blake Shelton is, and I was talking to a couple people this week who didn't, he is a country music star. He is one of the judges on the TV show The Voice. He's very tall. He is, I think, from Oklahoma. Oh, don't quote me on that. He's very tall. He's kind of got sandy dark hair. He's dating Gwen Stefani, and he's not a bad-looking guy. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm going to necessarily name him as the sexiest man alive, but I'm not going to hold that out from him. I'm not going to hold it out from him just because I don't particularly find him attractive. That, taste is different for everyone. Attraction is different for everyone. I just feel dang bad for the man because wow, people were upset, and there's been so many lists of people who are sexier than Blake Shelton in people's opinions. So that has been popping up in my news feeds and and Twitter and Instagram, everywhere I go. I don't think I've seen a single tweet saying this is awesome, go Blake Shelton, or a single social media post saying that. And Blake Shelton tweeted out the cover of the People magazine and said thank you to People magazine. And then people, of course, started replying. And one exchange that I did find kind of amusing was Hugh Jackman tweeted something along the lines of, enjoy that, and kind of milk it for all it's worth, that sexy factor, because it doesn't last. It's only somebody else will be named next year. And he then tweeted at Ryan Reynolds saying, don't you agree with me? And of course, Ryan Reynolds is very active on social media, especially on Twitter. And he tweeted that Blake Shelton and Hugh Jackman were both just speed bumps on the way to Patrick Stewart becoming the sexiest man alive. And for some reason, neither of those tweets were malicious or, kind of grumpy about Blake Shelton. So I appreciated that and just the humor of it. I also happen to love Patrick Stewart, so that was funny to me. And if you don't know who Patrick Stewart is, I feel bad for you. He was Captain Picard on Star Trek The Next Generation. A lot of people know him from that, but he's been in so many things, in TV, movies, live theater. He was in the X-Men. He's Professor Xavier in the X-Men, so you might know him from that. The older one, not the younger one that's in the newer movies. Frankly, I find Patrick Stewart, I've always been attracted to Patrick Stewart, so I don't know what that says about me, just that, and especially since Next Generation came out when I was in high school, and was I in love with Patrick Stewart. So, yes, I vote for Patrick Stewart as sexiest man alive. Go for it. But what really made me smile even more than this sort of silly back and forth by celebrities on Twitter was that then Patrick Stewart replied with a picture of him on the cover of TV Guide in a white shirt and a leather vest, and he's got his arms kind of up over his head, and the picture looked, it wasn't a recent picture, it looked like a fairly old picture, maybe from when, I think it might have been from when he was on Star Trek. And so he tweeted, I can't even remember what he said, but just the picture was hilarious and it made me laugh. So I appreciate people who can, kind of poke fun at the situation, but not maliciously. And so I will say congratulations to Blake Shelton on being the sexiest man alive. I'm interested to know what you think. Do you agree? Do you think the man is attractive? Would you have voted for someone else were it something that you vote on? Also, let me just say that this whole conversation is a little bit eye-rolling worthy because the man is very talented. He's won a lot of awards. He is very well respected in the country music field. So it's not like he has nothing going for him besides his looks. We tend to, in this country, and I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but I just want to say we tend to we just boil things down to appearance, right? And then we feel compelled to comment on those appearances and body shame people and X, Y, and Z about all of this stuff when he is very talented in his own right. And, he's on a very popular television show on The Voice. And for goodness sakes, the man's dating Gwen Stefani. Not that we're going to boil his talents down to that either. But I think he's got a few things going for him in his life. So I don't know that he's going to necessarily need to be people's sexiest man alive to put that on his resume or anything. But wow, folks, calm down. It's People magazine and it's fine. Next year there'll be someone else and you can argue and complain about that person. Would I like to see a person of color on there and on there more frequently? Heck yeah. Would I appreciate Idris Elba? Oh yeah, that's a nice looking man. But in the end, I don't think it's probably going to affect the state of the world that much. So congratulations to Blake Shelton, People's Sexiest Man Alive for this year. We are going to take our first break of the podcast, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the last episode of Mike and Mike that aired this morning. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. So, are you looking to spice things up in the bedroom? Have you been thinking or fantasizing about maybe surprising your lover with some kind of adventurous new toy or maybe a new adult movie? Well, we've got an offer for you that you aren't going to be able to resist. Just go to adamandeve.com, and for a limited time only, you'll get 50% off of just about any item on their website. And that's not all. When you select your one item at 50% off, you will also receive 3 free adult DVDs. Plus a free mystery gift. I can't even mention it on the podcast. I don't know what it is. It's a mystery. And to top it all off, they will even throw in free shipping on your entire order. No, they're not kidding. Just go to adamandeve.com today for this special offer. You'll get 50% off of that one item when you type in the promo code SMP at checkout. That's SMP, Think Social Media Podcast. When you do, you'll get the 3 free DVDs, a free extra gift, and that free shipping. Just use offer code SMP at adamandeve.com. That's SMP, Think Social Media Podcast at adamandeve.com. Welcome back to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. Before the break, we were talking about Blake Shelton being named the Sexiest Man Alive by People magazine and the just hilarious uproar that has caused. We're going to move on to a different topic now, and that is this morning the number one trending topic in terms of social media was the last episode of Mike and Mike. There were a lot of people tweeting about that, sending messages on social media about the last episode. And I actually even watched it, which is amazing to me, given that I've never really been a huge sports fan. I've never had anything against sports. I just have never really been a huge fan. But I did know Mike and Mike. They started on January 2nd of 2000. And they were just on the radio at that time. And then eventually the radio show also became a television show, and they've been going strong for almost 18 years. Today was their last episode of Mike and Mike on ESPN. I guess I should have said that in case you don't know what it is. Mike and Mike is a 4-hour-a-day sports show on ESPN. So they cover all of the sports news that's been happening and all the different sports stories. They talk about mostly sports, but obviously other things. They talk a lot about their families, and that was an important part to them for their show. And then they always have these crazy things going on. It's a 4-hour daily show, so of course they have other things happening. And what I notice is they always seem to be having some crazy bet where if you lose, you have to do something ridiculous. And I don't know what Mike Green. So it's Mike and Mike Greenberg and Mike Golick. Greenie and Golick. And Greenie had to milk a cow twice when he lost, and he's really germophobic, so that just freaked him out, especially the second time when the cow pooped on him. Golick had to have various body parts waxed on television. Obviously nothing, nothing that we couldn't see on television, thankfully. There's just one of their most recent bets involved another person from the Dan Le Batard show, which is another ESPN show, and he and Golick were talking about the Notre Dame Miami game, and whoever won, Stugotz is the guy from the Dan Le Batard show, was going for Miami because he lives in Florida, and Golick was rooting for Notre Dame, and so whoever lost had to massage the other one's butt. mean, just ridiculous kind of stuff, right? Which made it entertaining to watch. So today was their last show, and just lots and lots of tributes and people sending in their wishes over social media. And like I said, I'm not a huge sports fan, but even I knew this show. A boyfriend of mine a long time ago used to listen to it in the car, and it was one of the sports shows that I didn't mind listening to. I actually found it entertaining because it was, not just kind of blah, blah, blah sports, but there were other things as well, and I appreciated that. And then when I got married, then my husband is a big sports guy, and he really liked the show, so I've watched it on and off over the years with him and really appreciated them. So it was fun to watch their last show today and to see all of the tributes and just see really how much people appreciated them and how much they'll be missed as a show. And really, when you think about it, 18 years, almost 18 years, just a little over a month, 6 weeks or so short of 18 years is really impressive. I mean, a lot of TV shows don't last that long, and I realize it started out as a radio show, so it hasn't been a television show that at 18 years. But a lot of relationships don't last that long if you think about it, and these two have been hosting a show for almost 18 years. The president of ESPN came on for a few minutes, and he said that it was something like 14,000 hours of content, I think. It was something, it was just a huge number of live content that they had and the number of shows that they had done. And it was just very, very impressive. And they also spent some time talking about what's changed since 2000 when they started. And one of the things that kind of jumped out and they kept bringing up was that Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, was 15 years old in 2000 when they started the show. And now he is I think they said the 5th richest person. And so they were kind of joking throughout the show that maybe they should have done something else with their 18-year run. And there were other things too. It's kind of the careers that people had in the 18 years, and they were joking. Can't you give us some stories about people who failed in the last 18 years? Because come on, this is bumming us out. But anyway, that was the number one trending topic this morning, and it was actually very sweet. So they will be missed even by me, a person who knows not a heck of a lot about sports, but who has learned from both my husband and actually Mike and Mike. So thanks, guys. You will be missed. Good luck with your future endeavors and everything that you'll be doing moving forward. Up next, there is a rumor, maybe it's more than a rumor, confirmed that Amazon has bought the rights to possibly develop a Lord of the Rings reboot as a television series. So Amazon, it would be streaming, so you would get, I would assume, the entire season at a time. So Lord of the Rings as a series, kind of like Game of Thrones or something along those lines. And people are, my noticing the reactions on social media is that people either really love it or they really hate it. There doesn't seem to be any in between on a Lord of the Rings reboot. I'm wondering what you think. What do you think about Lord of the Rings, first of all? Have you read the books? Do you like the books? Did you like the movies? I read the books. I loved the movies. I liked the books too. And I really liked the movies, the original. I'm not as fond of the Hobbit trilogy simply because the Lord of the Rings trilogy is 3 books and they made a movie on each book. The Hobbit is 1 book and it's about a minute long, and they made 3 3-hour movies out of this tiny little book, and that just seemed overkill to me. I mean, make 1 movie out of it. You don't need, not everything needs to be a trilogy, folks. So that kind of lost a little bit in the translation for me. People are excited about the possibility of what they could do. Some people think, no. My only question is, do we really not have anything original to do anymore? I mean, the number of reboots is just crazy to me. And I don't mind the occasional reboot, and when they're well done, it's okay, and they were really popular in their original form, it's maybe okay, but I just feel like we don't have any original ideas anymore. And so all we're doing is remaking things from, we're remaking all the movies from the 80s, and we are remaking television shows. We're rebooting television shows, and it can be okay. Some of them are very good, and it's often fun to see, especially on rebooted television shows, to see cast members get back together, especially if it was one of your favorite shows in its original airing. But I don't know. I just feel like every time I turn around, something else is being rebooted or remade, and sometimes it's okay, and other times I'm just like, ugh, no, stop it. So maybe I'm old. I don't know. But what do you think about a Lord of the Rings reboot? How do you feel about it as a television series? I think it could have some, there could be some good things about it being a television series. You can do things in a television series that you can't necessarily do in a movie. And the director's cut of the movies were all around 4 hours. So they really did pack a lot of the books into those movies, but you can do more in a television series, which as a book lover always worries me, because then I have to wonder, what are they going to add? Sometimes those additions make sense, right? Sometimes it makes perfect sense to give a little more of the backstory that you don't get as much of maybe in a book or in a 2-hour movie. But sometimes they add things that just make me go, why? What? Huh? So I would have some concerns. I really loved the cast of the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. So it's always a little tricky to have new actors playing those roles if you love them a lot. But that can be a good thing as well. The Samwise Gamgee, who was played by Sean Astin, was recently on... he recently did an interview. He's actually in the new season of Stranger Things, so he went to talk about that. But they asked him about this possible Lord of the Rings reboot, and he was favorable about it. And they said, "Would you consider being Sam again?" And he said, when I saw that, it never even occurred to me that I would be Sam again. And so he said, it's important for other people to take those roles. And I'm paraphrasing here, and hopefully if they do it, the showrunners would have the ability to make the show that they want to make. So could be interesting. I don't even know if it's going to happen. It's just in the talking stages, whatever. So we will see what happens, but I would love to hear from you, yay or nay, on a Lord of the Rings reboot, especially as a television series. So you can go onto our social media pages, and let me know what you think. We are going to take our second and final break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be talking about Thanksgiving and some of the things on social media regarding Thanksgiving. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the GSMC Social Media News Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. We are talking about a variety of subjects today, from Blake Shelton being named Sexiest Man Alive to the final episode of Mike and Mike to a Lord of the Rings reboot. And now I want to turn our attention to Thanksgiving, because it is less than a week away, and Thanksgiving always, to me, gets kind of a bad rap because Christmas takes over immediately after Halloween, and you don't get Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving gets a raw deal, you don't find Thanksgiving decorations and you don't get Thanksgiving carols. And I just would, people love Christmas, and I get that. I love Christmas also. It's just Thanksgiving, if you use it as a day of thanks and a day of family and a day of gratitude, as opposed to maybe celebrating a questionable historical moment in time, that's maybe a story for another podcast. But, a day of thanks, not a bad thing. Giving a day of gratitude. And we talked a little bit last week about the 30 days of gratitude. Maybe that was the week before. My days are running together. But 30 days of gratitude is one of the things that happens on social media during the month of November, when people say one thing a day for the month that they are thankful for in their lives. And it's a nice, it's a nice thing to sometimes to remember the good things in your life, to remember the things in your life that you maybe take for granted on a regular basis. So not a bad thing to remember those items, those people, those memories on, if there's a day set aside for it. And, it's a day that you get to eat and eat and eat if that's your heart's desire, which I can't even remember the average number of calories that are consumed in a single Thanksgiving plate, but it's something just absolutely ridiculous. I remember there was an episode of Mythbusters where they talked about the number of calories that you take in during a traditional Thanksgiving meal, and holy cow. So Thanksgiving on social media. What have you been seeing in terms of social media Thanksgiving besides the 30 days of gratitude? I saw a couple of things. A friend of mine posted on Facebook the other day, ruin Thanksgiving in 4 words. So what 4 words would you use to ruin Thanksgiving? And a couple of the items were Thanksgiving is vegan. That's 3 words. Something about it being vegan, and, so kind of silly things like that. Let's talk about politics. That's 3 words too, but you get what I'm saying. So I can't remember the actual 4-word phrases. I had them in my head a minute ago. Now they've all turned into 3-word phrases. I am losing a word here somewhere, but what are the 4 words that would ruin Thanksgiving for you? And, that kind of depends on your Thanksgiving traditions, I would think, as to what might ruin your Thanksgiving. Another one that a different friend of mine posted on Facebook this week was, what's the one meal, the meal item, what's the one item of Thanksgiving dinner that everyone else seems to love but you hate? And there were, a lot of people don't like turkey. Don't like stuffing. They said it was a texture thing. There were some other, people don't like cranberry from a can. I like cranberries sometimes. It depends on how they're made. Cranberry from a can, while I do like that it comes out shaped just like the can and it's all wiggly and jiggly, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing that I love to eat. My mom actually makes a cranberry jello whipped cream concoction that's really good. So she tends to make that rather than traditional cranberry jelly or something along those lines. And I've always liked that. For me, my favorite part of Thanksgiving is the dessert. I love pecan pie. I love pumpkin pie. It's just a good time for pie in general. Last year for Thanksgiving, we celebrated my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. Their wedding anniversary was 2 days after Thanksgiving, and which is fun because it was 2 days after Thanksgiving the year they got married. So same thing. It was a Saturday they got married, and it was a Saturday for their anniversary, which was cool. But we did, instead of having a cake for their party, we had a pie contest. My nieces decided they all wanted to make pies. And so everyone made a pie and brought it. And then my parents were the judges. But they were too sweet. They said they didn't want to choose any pies because they didn't want anybody's feelings to get hurt. So they said this pie was the best for this reason and this pie was the best for that reason. And they were very sweet. But it was their 50th anniversary and they could do what they wanted. So I like pie. That's basically my point. But for me, the one item that I am not terribly fond of for Thanksgiving happened after I got married. And as you may know, if you are married or in a long-term relationship, or if you've ever gone to your in-laws for Thanksgiving, and they might have different traditions than you, they might have different food than you. Stuffing can be a huge debate as to, is it savory? Is it sage? Does it have walnuts? Does it have cranberries? You know, there's all kinds of stuffing arguments. My husband's family has all kinds of things that I wasn't used to on Thanksgiving, like macaroni and cheese. They love macaroni and cheese on Thanksgiving, and so that's okay. But we went to his aunt's house the first time I went home with him for Thanksgiving after we were married, and he was excited, she was excited. She had saved him a plate of chitlins. And he said, "You're going to try them, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." Well, first of all, I made the mistake of smelling them first. Bad choice. And so that just kind of ruined it for me. Now, if you are a fan of chitlins, I am not saying anything against you. My husband loves them, and everyone's tastes are different. It just wasn't my cup of tea. So that's probably not a traditional Thanksgiving dinner item for some families, and for others it might be, but that would be my answer to what's one thing that people in your family love for Thanksgiving that you don't want to eat. That would be my answer. So Thanksgiving, again, coming up next week, just in case you hadn't been aware of it. And I went on Pinterest recently to look at Thanksgiving ideas. And Pinterest is this beautiful, lovely, wonderful rabbit hole that you can fall down and never come out of. And some of the things on there are just... all the pictures are beautiful. I tend to go into this sort of glazed over daze when I start looking at Pinterest because there's so much and everything is always so perfectly presented, right? I really love the Pinterest fails because it reminds people that we are human and that not everything comes out looking like it's in a magazine spread. But my goodness, I mean, I like a pretty table for Thanksgiving, and you know, you set it nicely and you have friends over and you make a nice meal. But for me, yes, it's about the presentation. You want your food to look nice. Obviously, we eat with our eyes first. And the table is nice when you're having family or friends over. That's always nice. But the extremes that people go to and the ideas on Pinterest, they just made my head swim a little bit. My eyes started to cross. There were so many things. I mean, do we really need crayon holders for the children shaped like pilgrim hats? Or... just the crazy number of options for decorating that, if that's your thing, more power to you, because I do not have those genes. And actually, my sister and my mother have those decorating genes. They can make anything out of anything and make it look pretty. But Pinterest just is during holidays, Pinterest I have a love-hate relationship with it because I go to it for ideas, and sometimes I get some really good ideas, but I always have to wade through everything that makes me feel really inadequate when I go on Pinterest. So I am thankful that other people have those genes and that they make things look pretty. But I think I'm going to wrap things up there because my voice is just getting scratchier and scratchier, and I don't want to subject you to it anymore. I want to thank you for joining me as we talked about things that were going on in social media news this week, from Blake Shelton to Lord of the Rings to Mike and Mike to Thanksgiving and Pinterest and all those fun things on Facebook that you can read about people's experiences. I'm looking forward to next week when people start posting their pictures from Thanksgiving and talking about family and friends and all the good things that are happening. I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'll be joining you, of course, on Friday afterwards when we're all in a food coma. That will be fun. So I hope you'll join me again next week when we will talk about who knows, because don't know what's going to happen in the world of social media in the next week, do we? Thank you so much for joining me. Please join me again next week. In the meantime, you can find this podcast and all of our GSMC podcasts at www.gsmcpodcast.com. You can download those podcasts, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, any app that you use for your mobile device. You can find us on social media. You can come and talk to us on social media. I would love to hear from you. Any of those questions that I asked tonight, any of the subjects that we talked about in this podcast, I would love to hear from you. So GSMC social media on Facebook, or GSMC_S media on Twitter, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining me. Go out there and be social.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.